My life created.
No, just normal, regular.
No,
that's not regular. That's not regular.
Created.
Can you say my life creative?
My life creative.
If you really want to know, where does it hurt? What hurts Amanda? Well, how can we make Amanda hurt? It's opening up the books and looking at the work of masters. And I just kind of wait for the light to talk, and then I do my best to try to sort of capture what I see.
And welcome to My Life Creative. I'm Richard Zombeck. I'm here with my partner and my wife, Pamela Joy. Pamela, say hello.
Hello.
And today we have an interview with Amanda O'Donoghue. But before we get to that, I do want to remind everyone to go to mylifecreative.com, where you can get backgrounds on the show, our show notes, the bios of our guests, as well as links to other shows. So, Pamela, you did this interview with Amanda. Why don't you tell us a little bit about her?
I would be happy to. I wanted to talk with Amanda because I've watched her grow into a very committed artist. She has dealt with and deals with subjects that are very deep, and her work is actually helping people. She's not afraid to go to places that might be emotional. She deals in birth photography along with mothers and children. That's really her. Well, she is a mother with 2 young children, so that is her focus. But she does beautiful things in so many different ways. I love her story. I like her background. It's very authentic. And I just thought she would be an interesting person to speak with. So that's it.
Okay, and with that, let's listen to the interview with Amanda O'Donoghue.
My life creative.
What's a normal day in the life of Amanda O'Donoghue? What does it look like? And then I really want to go back and talk about and you can start there too, your upbringing, your grandparents. So pick a place and we can start from there.
Well, when I wake up, the day-to-day looks like I get up whenever the baby gets up, and we get the boys ready. Jasper's in school now, and Sammy stays home with me, and Jay got a real job, this past year after he took 11 years to finish his PhD. He finally got a real job. So now he's gone, 8 to 5 every day. And it's just me and Sam, which is very different than what it was just, 6 months ago. So, it's slow going. It's me putting a baby to sleep all day long. That's pretty much what that looks like. It's a lot of downtime and a lot of time to think, a lot of time just being on the internet on my phone because I'm either trapped under a sleeping baby or putting a baby to sleep or, thinking about getting a baby to sleep. So that's my day-to-day now. It's not glamorous, not at all. I miss my older son who's now in school full-time. Things have changed a lot in the past 6 months, for sure.
You've slowed down a lot.
They slowed down a lot. I feel like I've started over, where, we have almost a 5-year gap in between our children. So it's like I raised one up, he went to school, and then I had another one, and now I'm kind of doing it all over again. Hopefully not making the same mistakes, but there's a lot of coffee involved in my day-to-day, lots of coffee. No time for really reading, no time for self-care, no time for myself eating. It's hard. It's survival. It really is.
But because when I was at your house, I noticed that you had, you liked to get a photograph a day of Jasper, Are you still doing that? Because you sort of interject, like, I was interested in how that works for you and maybe how that's changed over time. Because when they're little, they don't really have a choice, right? They don't know to say no. And then as they get older and they find a little voice, they can say, no pictures, or let's do this, or whatever. So when you are creating, do you have, like, do you see a specific light or a scene? Is it spontaneous? Is it a little planned? Is it a little bit of both?
These days, it's really spontaneous, and it almost always has to do with the light. I see light, probably a lot like other photographers do. You're right with Jasper. He's 5 now, and he just doesn't tolerate it. There's either bribery that has to go on, or I have to capture something completely and 100% candid, which doesn't work all that well, considering that the bulk of my photos of him are portraits. And he just doesn't sit well for portraits anymore at his age. So there's definitely been a shift. This year, after having my second child, the shift has definitely gone to more towards still life. Just kind of leaving the kids behind altogether and just sort of focusing on more of a feeling of the day, feeling of my environment, certain things that really stand out in my day to day. And yeah, I just kind of wait for the light to talk, and then I do my best to try to sort of capture what I see. Unfortunately, that relationship between my son and I that was very, very strong, I'd say for about the first 3.5, 4 years of his life has definitely changed. It's not the same anymore, but I do feel like it's been replaced almost by the relationship I now share with my second son, who's sort of kind of stepped in and taken his place as the baby. He's now the baby, of course, and my older son is no longer a baby. And so, yeah, it's all very heart-wrenching and bizarre and filled with guilt. And yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, for sure, to take a photo every day and to what that looks like. And it no longer really revolves around Jasper like it used to.
So it's all shifting and kind of, which is interesting. So I liked the one comment you made that you wait for the light to talk. Mm-hmm. It seems like that's how it's always been, right? From when I look at a lot of your work early on. And I feel I've known you since 2012. That was when I think we both took Deb's workshop.
Right.
And it was at that time. So, and I didn't know anything about you. Like, I've learned bits and pieces of you over time, like the piece with your grandparents, and then the place I obsessed of going to your uncle's little nature preserve with the flamingos.
Yeah.
So I'd like to understand how you got to where you are by going back. 'Cause you're Florida born and raised,
right?
And the animal, like, your whole world is outside. So I'd love to talk about that and how, thinking back now, maybe you weren't aware of it then, but thinking back how maybe light and all these little elements that you fold into your work today, do you see how they began? Like, do you see the seeds and how they sort of grew over time?
I think if I look closely enough, I can see that. I don't know if they came, yeah, yes, I can. I think it all comes down to patience, maybe. Working with animals in captivity, I had to have a lot of patience. You had to wait around for these animals to do things like
what?
Like bringing them in the evening. When you work at, like, I worked at a zoo, and I worked with great apes for about 3 years in Tennessee, and yeah, they have a mind of their own. I mean, great apes are, they're they're our closest relative, right? And they're like little people. And so you can't just tell them what to do. They're not always going to listen to you. Just like children aren't always going to listen to you. And, there's a lot of patience there. Come in for the evening, Muggsy. It's time to come in and have your dinner, Daisy. And they just look at you like, I'm not going in that concrete box. I'm going to stay out here on my 2-acre exhibit and hang out and feel the wind and feel the sun. And, so a lot of it had to do with patience. There's a lot of patience that I learned early on, along with humility. Animals, they taught me a lot about humility. Great apes, they kind of, especially in particular chimpanzees, they wear everything on their sleeve. So it is just, it's an amazing view into their world when you get to work with them, and they teach you a lot about yourself.
I would love to know, when you say humility, what do you mean by that? How did they teach you to be more humble?
Well, they're locked up, Pamela. They're in captivity.
Yeah.
They're in captivity. I mean, it's just like, I don't want to equate it to living in a prison system, right. Because there was so much love and care that went into that job. It was not like a jail, but they aren't free, and they don't get to make their own decisions most of the time. And so, it's a huge lesson in humility as far as, how they get to experience themselves personally, because they all have different personalities. I mean, I may be talking about this a little bit, that might be a little bit complicated for some people, but, chimps they're individuals, and just like you and me and our parents and our kids, and they're all individuals. And they teach you a lot about humility in the way that they have to live,
I can relate to that in the sense of it's like not, I think anybody would know that there's no two dogs are the same.
Right.
They all have their own personalities.
Right.
They're all their own little being. I don't care what breed, what size.
Sure.
There's no two dogs that are exactly the same. So why anyone would think that other animals are all going to behave as a generic standard of some sort, that's ludicrous.
No, they all have their own story.
Yeah.
They all have their own story. They all have their own zoo that they were born at, a group that they grow up with, whether they were hand-reared by humans or whether they were raised by their parents in captivity. They all have their story, and they all have their own personalities. And getting to know them and having them be sort of my first family was definitely prepared me for having children. As silly as it sounds, now I have my own little chimpanzees, so to speak. But true, it was a big lesson in patience, and really prepared me to have my own kids.
Did you photograph them at that time?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, actually, that's when I've been taking photos since I was a teenager, my early teens, about 14 years old is when I first got my first Canon AE1, film camera in high school. Did the whole darkroom thing there. Don't really remember hardly any of that experience, just because high school, I just like to block as much of that out as I possibly can. Been pretty successful at it, so I can't tell you any details beyond that. But yeah, I did. I got a point and shoot. And I started photographing them, and I really wanted to capture portraits of them, sort of anthropomorphize their features, which just, a lot of people can relate to great apes because they have these expressions that are so much like our own, but at the same time so very different. And I did. I started photographing them, and I remember one of the happiest days of being a keeper when working with those animals was one of my photographs. This point and shoot photograph was chosen to be on a National Geographic Kids website. And I remember just thinking like, oh my gosh, like National Geographic, and I just got, so full of it, and it really filled me up with like such a wonderful feeling that I could not only work with these animals but share them with other people, and share them with kids, and most importantly use it to educate. And so I was very much into that. in the early few years when I first started taking photos before I got serious, with a full frame DSLR. But yeah, I did. I loved taking photos of them. I still have all those photos too.
Yeah, I was going to say I've never seen any.
Yeah,
have you shared
I do.
Any?
I've shared a couple of a gorilla, one in particular of a gorilla that's a black and white. That's a halfway decent portrait. I didn't completely blow all my highlights, and I wasn't able to, I wasn't shooting in RAW back then. So it was, the ones that I have are all shot in JPEG. There's not much I can do as far as helping them out a little bit, that little bit of help that I did need. And, I don't believe I was shooting in manual at the time either. So, but yeah, I do. I've shared them before.
I've seen the one when you went, when you were on your road trip and you were coming back. I think you stopped and you took Jasper to meet him.
Yes, yeah, I did.
Beautiful.
I brought my boy back there. Yes, I brought my boy back there, and that was it was such a heart-filled moment, and I just. Every time I get to go see those guys, it's just such a treasure. I took photos that day. I went actually one day beforehand. I went by myself because I really needed to get all that emotion out. And I didn't want to have to do it in front of my 3.5-year-old. So I went back, and I had been 5 years since I had seen those chimpanzees and those gorillas. And one of my favorite chimpanzees went out onto the exhibit, and he brought me back a handful of freshly picked flowers.
Oh man.
And he gave them to me.
Incredible.
He gave them to me. Oh. And so I had to take photos of that. And so I took some photos of this little crumpled up bouquet, and because he still is a chimp, he's not, and it's all crumpled and pushed through these tiny little bars, so he wanted to make sure I had them. And it was just it was a beautiful experience. Yeah. It was like a full circle coming back to that and experiencing that after having my own kids and kind of moving on from working with animals full time like that. Yeah.
Well, at the same time, though, when I look at your, I've looked through your portfolio of the one son, and I see a lot of things starting to shift during that time. The three that I pulled out that I can look at forever are the one where Jasper put on that cape, that plastic bubble wrap cape.
Bubble wrap, yeah.
Was that his idea, or did you do that? Did he do that?
It was all his idea, and the entire photo wasn't planned at all either. It just all kind of happened.
Spectacular.
Yeah, it just rained, and in Florida, after it rains, the roads steam. And he wanted to go across the street to his friend's house, so I followed him out there with my camera. And his friend wasn't there, so on his way back, he kind of trailed into the street. And I looked down the street, and it was just magic, And I just said, go back into the street, go back into the street. And he did. And I just said, look down there or whatever. There was just very slight direction. And it was he just gave me enough time to get that frame. And I only shot a handful of those frames, but he gave me enough. And I love that photo too. It sort of represents him always just trying to fly off and do something very independent. And the bubble wrap cape. I won't forget that. That was great.
I also loved where he's looking for the chicken, and the chicken's out the other side.
Yeah.
He was itty bitty then. I think he was younger. I remember when you posted that, and I almost pulled it off because it's universal. It has a universal sentiment, but it says everything about him. He's curious. He's engaged. He's a little you. He's like a little mini me. I could see you doing that at his age, running around looking for the chicken. And because you're little.
Yeah, and of course that wasn't planned. I couldn't plan for that chicken to sort of escape that 2-year-old at that very moment. It was just another part of being, having a lucky that I'm carrying my camera around, just having it with me and just trying to capture him. Yeah, that's an old one, Pamela. That's an old photograph.
I know it is. But that whole year, because the one that really stood out that year for me, it was, and I think this was before you went on, I think it was right around the time that a lot of things were happening for you, where your husband has your son in his arms, and he's got a blue towel wrapped around him, and his hair is falling down. He's asleep. It looks like he's asleep. I don't know what.
Yeah, you know, he always needed assistance to fall asleep. He's never been one of those kids that would fall asleep in the car or fell asleep on the couch after a long day or while watching a movie. He didn't. He needed constant warmth of another body, pressure, motion, white noise. I mean, you name it. He's just a very intense, sensitive child. And that night he came out of the bath and he literally fell asleep in his dad's arms, just in the towel, just like that. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And my husband was sitting on the edge of the tub, and of course that beautiful Renaissance light just pouring through that window. And I grabbed my camera, and it was one of the first low light shots I ever took, and I was just smitten. And it was a huge turning point for my processing. How I processed my photos, that set, I have a whole set of those photos of him sleeping because I just couldn't stop taking photos. Yeah, that was a big turnaround. You're right.
That one's always really stood out to me because it seemed like after that, things really changed.
Yeah.
And it's like subtly, it's not like night and day, right? Because your work before that was beautiful, but it shifted in a way. I always got a lot of emotion out of that one.
Well, it became consistent. You know, the work just started to become consistent. I finally produced something that I really loved, and then I spent the next, year and a half trying to do it over and over and over again. And so I had an idea, and that's what I would go for. And yeah, when you do that, you kind of master something, and you just get better and better at it. I'm not completely 100% there, but I grew a bit confident. I grew more confident. And I think that is what you see maybe is just a little bit more confidence in work, because I knew that the consistency was there and that I was mastering my manual settings. I was able to walk into a room, and without using my meter on my camera, I was able to look at it and know exactly a good starting point for my ISO, a good starting point for my f-stop, a good starting point for my shutter speed. And from that point on, it just got easier and easier and easier for me. Yeah, that was a great, it was a great turnaround, I think
This is interesting because what you just said, okay, so I'm thinking of everything we've talked about to date. So you basically shot all the time with your little one because he didn't have a choice. And right. You were really interested. So light always grabbed you, but scene, moment, story, all those things sort of grabbed you.
Yeah.
And then you had this moment of, a lot of shooting, a lot of maybe wanting to learn, but not being aware that you're learning what you're doing, but you're doing, right? So you're learning. And then you get to this point where that's what I want. I want more of that. Now, how do I get more of that? So you already had the discipline in place of photographing. Now it coupled with some intent, because and you were going through a very heart-wrenching time before you went on. You left your home, your cat, your personal experiences, and then you went off on this road trip.
Yeah.
And on that road trip,
everything solidified.
Take me with you. Yes. Yeah. You had time, space, so you could shoot every day. You could shoot with intent every day.
Yeah.
You didn't have the bother of the home and the all the things that we get trapped or kind of sucked out of into life. You got to live and experience and explore and see new things and see new light. Like everything really, that's interesting, because everything after that point I see is just everything came together, solidified things.
Yeah, it did. The confidence was there. The discipline was there. Taking that trip was the first time I could pick up my camera, and I was like, this is for me. This is for me. That one's for me. This frame is for me. And it was all for me and my family. And it wasn't for social media. It wasn't for my friends. It wasn't for other photographers. For the first time, it was all for me. And our traveling experience itself was for us. It was for our immediate family. It was for me, my husband, and my son. It definitely, the discipline was definitely there. And I was actually smack dab in the middle of my a 365, a photo a day, when I went on that trip in the summer of 2014. And so I had already had like the discipline. I was already 6 months into shooting every single day. But now I finally got to take photos of new stuff, you know, and it became very easy at that point to just pick up my camera, because anywhere I pointed it was beautiful. In Vermont, in Shenandoah Valley, in Rhode Island, in the city of Boston on the train, in the cliffs of, Manitoulin Island in Canada. I mean, in the city of Ottawa. I mean, we were everywhere. So I was no longer sitting in my house going, oh my God, how can I make this room look interesting again? It was, all I had to do was pick up my camera and take photos. It was very easy. Yeah.
How freeing. How did that change? Do you feel that changed you after that?
I think it changed all of us. To be able to get rid of pretty much everything and put it all into storage, and pack your belongings in a little Tupperware, and that's all you got, and live in a tent trailer. The Canadians like to call them tent trailers. We call them pop-up campers. Live in a pop-up camper for a little over 2 months was a wonderful experience. Yeah. Back to that humility again. We didn't get to shower every day. I mean, I remember we were in Virginia, and the only thing we had was this spring-fed spigot, right? And you had to pump it. It was a pump, and we were showering in that. And I was like sitting in creeks, just trying to clean myself, and I remember one night my son took a bath in the Potomac River, and this is what we did for like 2 months. And it was absolutely freeing. We weren't in hotels. We weren't even in nice campsites. We were in national forests where you didn't, you had to pay a couple bucks, but they didn't have anything but a pot for you to in and a spring-fed pump, if that, so that.
It sounds like your own little Cheryl Strayed Wild.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, just from how I think it was, I'm hoping this is the right word, cathartic. I'll have to ask Richard if that's the right word, but I'm thinking it was a cathartic experience in the way of you worked out a lot of things, you got close with your family, all the photography just freed you up. I think it's exactly what you needed at that time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was exactly what our family needed. Of course, it was really hard coming back and not sort of falling back into that doldrum of the routine.
How did you deal with that? What was that like coming back?
Well, coming back was a nightmare. We didn't want to come back, but we did. It turns out I was pregnant, and when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, we need to get back home. We've got to get back home. I need a home. Like, we didn't have a place to live. And of course, all these hormones are raging through my body and making me want that stability again. So we headed back to Florida, and we were looking for a place, and things got very stressful. I ended up actually miscarrying that baby. And so I lost that pregnancy, and that was absolutely, a devastating blow for our family. And we were homeless. We didn't have a place to live. And it was August in the summer in Florida. After we'd spent the whole summer pretty much up north, we had to come back down to, the heat index, and it was exhausting. So we finally ended up finding a place, and everything, worked out. And 3 months later, I had another positive pregnancy. And so that pregnancy sort of took over with its illness and all that. So my work has really been put on hold since that trip. Well, I think it has. But if I really go back and look, I've produced a lot since then still. And I think it just sort of comes naturally now, whereas pre-trip I had to really work to try to produce something because I was shooting every single day and I tried to make it with intent. And then post-trip, it just became about life, loss, having the miscarriage loss, and then having another positive pregnancy, and then being so sick from that, and then having to deal with that supreme bond that I had with my first child sort of stretching, and we're separating and pulling further and further away from one another as this other baby grows inside of me. And it's all just still coming to a head, you know.
I see all of that in the nest. And you know what? I had the timing confused. I thought that your miscarriage happened before you went on that trip.
No, it happened the day, it happened the day after we got back into Florida, and we didn't have a place to live. So my good friend actually had some property. She had about 10 acres, and there was a shed, what do you call it? I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's like she had an extra room basically on her property. Mm-hmm. And it was a 1-bedroom efficiency that was built into this garage. And so we stayed there, and I started bleeding. And I knew that I was miscarrying. I knew that I was miscarrying the day before it actually happened. I told my mother that I was going to lose that child before I ever had a symptom. It was that coming back off of that trip was very hard.
So I cannot even possibly fathom how you picked yourself up off the floor with all this. What did you do? How did you, I would have, okay, I'll say if this were me, I think I'd be on the floor in a lot of, darkness for a while. Or I would bounce up and pretend everything's just fine because I don't want to cope. And then suddenly I'd hit a wall and I'd find myself on the floor. That's usually my MO. I ignore things for a while, and then when it finally I can't escape it anymore, I'm down, and I can be down for a while. So how did you pick yourself up and out?
Well, it's easy. I photographed it. You know, I photographed what I was going through, and that darkness. I photographed it. My photos got really dark after that. I started shooting more for highlights. If you want to talk technical, I started metering more for highlights, getting moodier and practicing a little bit more with some different style lighting, and kind of moved away from portraiture and moved more into working, doing a little bit more of still life work and a little bit more work based on feeling and emotions, and not just portraiture in an environment that was beautiful. I think before I really wanted this amazing wow factor, I wanted that landscape, that environment with that beautiful blonde curly haired child thrown in there somewhere. And then after that experience, it just became more about feeling.
I get it. I see it in the nest.
Oh yeah, the nest is full of just a dream, yes. A feeling, a way that makes you feel when you look at a photo and you feel it more than you see it. I don't know if that's a good way to explain that, but yeah, it just became less about these more conservative portraits that I did before. You know, I had this little cute baby, and I just, always wanted to take his picture. And now it's very different.
They all relate back to that one picture of your husband with your boy. All of them.
Yeah.
That, when I look at that one we were talking about, and then I go to the crib with the white dresser, which I think that's your grandmother's dresser, isn't it? It's an old dresser.
No, it's not.
That was yours growing up? Where did you find that? It's beautiful. It's old.
I have 2 pieces, and I found them in a local shop while I was pregnant, and I just had to have it. So I brought that home.
It's just got a vibe. It looks like I stepped into a dream. And then the one.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, yeah, that particular image is actually a tribute to the baby that I lost. That particular image was taken a year to the day that I had my miscarriage. So even a year after, I was still processing that. I was pregnant, of course, having a healthy pregnancy with my now little Sam. And I wanted to, again, deal with that those feelings. And again, I turned to picking up the camera, and I did. I just picked up the camera, and I believe that portrait's probably that still life is probably free lens. I think if it's the one that I'm thinking of, and it's just, it's a mood. That's basically all it is. It's the mood of a yearning for a child that never happened.
So intense. That one and the one where so I wanted to know about the one where you photographed yourself in a mirror and your belly's there and the light's on your belly. And it looks like you just saw the light, put your hand in the bathroom window, grabbed your camera and took it. I don't get that there was any kind of, I think I'll do this. I think you saw it and you did it.
You're exactly right. I came out of the shower and I saw the light reflected on the mirror. And of course I couldn't see myself because there was fog in the mirror. So I just wiped the fog off and grabbed my camera and tried for a few angles. It was very difficult because of where the mirror was placed and how my body looked. And, but I ended up just going with it and took some, and I'm glad I did that. Yeah. I was about 37 weeks pregnant. Some of my first, self-portrait nudes that I've ever shared. So it felt a bit racy, but at the same time, like I just was so confident in it that I,
so beautiful.
I didn't even second guess it. Yeah,
I can't believe you got that with the 50 millimeter. I don't know how you do what you do with the 50 because I can never find enough space it's like I feel compressed. Maybe it's because I'm so used to being wider that I just think, oh my God, how do people do this? I got to step like 15 feet back.
Yeah, well, I actually am on my toes a lot. For a lot of my photos, I'm on my toes. I'm always on my toes. My arms are out in weird angles. It's very, it's very theatrical. The whole thing is I look like a clown, when I photograph. But you're right. I would love a 35, and I don't know what the photos would look like if I was shooting with a 35. Maybe they'd look different. I don't know. I've been using a 50 for so long. I just don't know.
Yes, you're just so, that while equipment to me is irrelevant in so many ways, it's relevant to say you shoot with the same body, a 6D and a 50 millimeter lens, and have for as long as I've known you.
That's correct.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it goes to say that mastering one tool, one set, because I have the similar thing with the 35. That's all that I've used. And I'm just now at a point of, okay, I'm kind of done with this. I used a 24 for a bar mitzvah portraits and party, and I absolutely loved it. I'm like, this is what's been missing. I get all of it, the whole scene. Everything's in here, edge to edge. I was so excited. I even liked the portraits, even though they distorted a little bit. I was cool with the distortion. There was something about it. But still, for portraits, I like the 50. It's my favorite lens for portraits, which is really sum total what I see your work as being, a sequence of portraits, whether they're still lives, whether they're these documentary scenes. They have, I wrote some words down that I'll include in the blog that came up as I was looking at it, but you're one of those people that I've watched really, like from your Apple portrait still life that Deb had us do, how you did that, how you came up with that. I was like, holy shit, this girl's good. I could never come up with that concept. I'm like, fall down on my face. I don't understand. It's just doesn't make any sense to me. I can think of big ideas that I can never pull off, but concepting a photograph does not. I have a hard time with it. It's like seeing 3 dimensions. I don't see it, and I don't get it. It doesn't register. But your intent, it's always intentional, and it's been really, really cool to watch you grow.
Thank you.
Not that you sucked out of the gate, because you were very good.
I was so bad. I was so bad. Oh.
Well, yeah. We all start. Like, nobody comes out of the gate with something beautiful, right? We all have to learn.
Right.
But I think you can't really teach that eye thing. And the way you see, specifically with light, like I have gotten a lot out of just piece to piece to piece, how you started with this, how it led to that, and how that drove everything else because you already had everything in place. So I would like to know if you've obviously had disappointments and setbacks. How do you dealt with it by photographing? And how about we because I think the part of me, I'm going to mention it here because it deserves its own little deal. We're going to do another one just on that. I'm not even going to try and squeeze that in, other than to say
Right.
the portrait that you have, the very first picture that one of the first pictures you took with the woman who really opened herself up to you and is responsible for this, you then going on and doing the series. Her in the water holding her baby. I will never get over that picture. That was like,
Yeah.
if that doesn't say everything
Yeah.
and then what this is all about, it gives me chills.
I love that. Thank you. I love that idea of conceptual work every now and then, because I do have ideas. And I always get jealous of, some of my friends that are really, really good at it. And, some of those people, Marianne, Gobel is one of them that comes to mind. I love that conception when I get to think of something and then go and try to make it happen. And almost every time I do that, it doesn't ever come out the way I want it to, but every time I do that, I never regret it. So I still like to try to, take photos like that occasionally. I haven't done so much since, my pregnancy and my last birth, my last baby. But yeah, the part of me, that was a big one for me because that just sort of set the tone for what this series was going to be about. But then I had to make the decision on what I wanted the series to evolve into. Did I want to do straight portraiture, or did I want to make them more of environmental portraits, like the first one with the baby and using that bold environment around this little child? Yeah, so I've had a lot of decisions to make with that project. It's probably been one of the longest running projects and probably the hardest one. My personal stuff that is just me and my life, those are much easier to accomplish. But when I'm dealing with other people, of course, other people that deal with depression, that makes it a lot harder. I need a lot more patience with a project like that.
Well, like I said, I think it merits a larger discussion, and one that I kind of want the whole reason for it. I'd like almost a discussion around people who work in this postpartum that may have creative or different kinds of techniques other than medication and, yoga, meditation. We can talk about it and see if there's something that we could expand off of that would be helpful and inspiring to other people that have this, Yeah,
I'd love to have a conversation about that. Project has always been running in the background for the past few years. And it's something that I look forward to, continuing.
So last little bit, competition, social media, external pressure. How do you cope with it? What do you do? How do you be able to maintain because you have a very original voice that doesn't feel influenced by what other people are doing. You're doing your own thing. You're a big supporter of a lot of people. I don't know how the hell you're always on social media, but you are. You're like lightning speed to you're there all the time. There has to be a secret gateway that people get the news that I don't get, because all of you seem to know about things. I'm like, wow, damn, how did they find out about that? So I just wondered how you fold that into, you mentioned very early on that right now you're on it a lot because of just where you are. You got a little baby at home, you got a boy in school, you have this time. So, that's sort of, but how do you keep it separate or not go down the path of that, God, I wish I could be, I guess because you already have who you are, right? You're good with yourself and what you're creating, that you don't have this. Was there a time when you felt maybe you had to turn it off or step away because it hurt more than help? Does that make any sense?
Oh, well, I don't really need to step away from social media so much. What really gets me, if you really want to know, where does it hurt? What hurts Amanda? well, how can we make Amanda hurt? It's opening up the books and looking at the work of masters. And that hurts me.
Really?
that it doesn't hurt me. When my point is, it drives me. It makes me want to create more. It makes me want to not be stuck at home with kids all day. It makes me want to do things that I'm not doing. But social media doesn't do that for me, because social media only shows me other people like me.
That's a good distinction.
Does that make sense?
It's a really good distinction.
So I don't, and not that there's not, masters on social media, because there certainly, are people that are really out there making, names for themselves, in this decade with their work. And those people I love to follow along with, but they don't hurt me as much. I feel sort of more like a camaraderie. And so it all feels very friendly. And I'm sure if there's something that I needed to know about something or somebody's work, that they would be right there in the first one willing to answer. So yeah, I don't, and, I may be on it a lot these days. When you have a nursling at home, you're sitting on the couch and you're nursing, and with the internet in one hand and this nursling in the other. And there's only so much you can look at a nursing baby. The craning of the neck is just excruciating after days and days on end. So you look up and you look at your phone or whatever else. And so, yeah, these days I have been online a lot, but sometimes I'm not. And when it comes to sharing work on social media, I don't share everything. I only share things that move me. Occasionally, I will share things just to keep my name in that algorithm, right? But I'm not like a huge social media queen. You know what I mean? I'm not really out there. I share a lot of private things, but I don't have a lot of like private relationships with people. I'm not in the contests. I'm not entering my work into stuff. I just share casually. If it moves me, I share it. If it moves other people, that's wonderful. If it doesn't, I blame it on the algorithm. I try not to take it personally. I just like those real life interactions more than anything, and being able to, like, even this, talking with you, being able to talk about my work. It's wonderful. It's something that you can't get, off the internet. So yeah, it's the books that hurt me. It's not the social media. I just take that with a grain of salt, something. But I'm very lucky. I feel like I'm very lucky. I'm surrounded by a lot of really positive people, a lot of really positive artists, people that are constantly helping one another and lifting each other up. I haven't seen a lot of the ugly. I think I'm really fortunate.
I'm with you. I don't see a lot of that. I wouldn't be a part of it. It doesn't do any good. And I hear, I'm always curious with the gossip of it. Like, there's a part of me that, well, what's going on? But there are lots of things going on that I know nothing about. And it's been interesting because I've been kind of doing a lot of meditation of late. So I've learned to just be aware, or look at that and go, what is that? Where is that? Where does it live? What is it connected to? It just is. I don't have to do anything with it. It just, there have been a couple little things of late that have gone around that I know nothing about. I hear the bits and pieces of it. And I really, in the big picture of my day, knowing, what would it matter? It wouldn't. So whatever. I get what I'm supposed to get.
Yeah. You got to filter. You got to filter it. Yeah, certainly.
Well, I think we can call it a wrap. Thank you so much I know this, you're a mom, we've got a lot going on, but I appreciate you taking the time, and thank you.
It's wonderful. I'm happy to be a part of it. Thank you for having me.
Big hugs to your boys. Thank you so much. Big hugs to you.
Big hugs to you too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, hun.
This has been another episode of My Life Creative with Richard Zombeck and Pamela Joy. You can find us online at mylifecreative.com, where you'll find more information about us, our guests, and while you're there, please consider supporting the show to help us produce more content like this.
Oh yeah, can you feel it? Just over the credits, just riffing now. Words and chords. Not the poetry and the real thing, but not bad for an ad-lib. Not good, but... And it's not long enough, so just do a little bit more. And that's nearly done. That's the final credit there. That's the end.